Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Shekalim. We are up to Perik Chet Mishna Daled. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Menuchatam Began Eden, Amen. Having discussed the Tumah and Tara status of found items as they relate to consecrated purposes, the Mishnah discusses the laws of something that became Tameh in the temple. The Mishnah begins, Parochet shenitmet bivlad tumah. If a curtain hanging in the temple, which can include the curtains hanging between the Kodesh and the Kodesh Kodashim, as well as those separating the sanctuary from the temple courtyard, if it became Tameh by coming in contact with the secondary Tumah, meaning a beverage that is Tameh, and it makes the curtain Tameh by rabbinic law. We know an Avat Tumah generally is something that is itself a source of Tumah, meaning it creates Tumah. Something that became Tameh from coming into contact with an Avat Tumah is called Ivlada Tumah or secondary Tumah. While an Avat Tumah makes anything that comes in contact with it Tameh, a secondary Tumah can convey Tumah only to food or beverages, but not to people or utensils. The only exception to this rule is that of a beverage. Since Tameh beverages might be confused with body fluids of certain Tameh people, which can make people or utensils Tameh, even under biblical law, the rabbis decreed that any Tameh beverage can transfer Tumah to people or utensils. So the curtain in our Mishnah became Tameh by coming into contact with such beverages. Matbilin ota bifnim. We are not obligated to remove the curtain from the temple premises, as in the case with items that became Tameh according to biblical law, like the Mishnah will explain. Rather, since the curtain is Tameh only according to rabbinic law, we may immerse it in a mikveh inside the temple premises. There was a mikveh on top of the parva chamber, one of the chambers located in the temple courtyard. Umachnisin ota miyad, and then we may immediately return it to its proper place in the temple without waiting for nightfall, unlike an item that became Tameh according to biblical law, which may not be brought into the temple grounds until after nightfall following its immersion. Now, in some cases, the curtain may not be kept on the temple premises, ve'et shenitmet bava tumah, but if the curtain became Tameh through coming in contact with the primary source of Tumah, which has the ability to make it Tameh, even according to biblical law, matbilin otah bachutz, then we must remove it from its hanging place and immerse it outside the temple confines. The Torah states in Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 5, pasuk 1, that Tameh people must be sent out of the temple. This includes Tameh utensils as well, as the Gemara discussed in Masechet Eruvin, page 104b. Therefore, the curtain must immediately be removed from the temple premises. V'shotchin otah bachel. And even after it has been immersed, it still may not be brought back into the temple or the courtyard until after nightfall. Therefore, we spread the curtain out to dry in the chel, the area outside the temple's courtyard that does not have the same level of sanctity as the courtyard itself. The area immediately outside the temple courtyard was known as the women's courtyard because women would originally stand in this area when they would assemble outside the temple during certain times of the year. The area beyond the women's courtyard, called the chel, was enclosed by a fence called isoreg that separated that area from the rest of the temple mount. People or objects that became Tameh by coming in contact with the primary Tumah may not stay even in the chel, though they are allowed to remain on the rest of the temple mount. After immersion, while awaiting nightfall, they may enter the chel but may not go beyond that area. Since the curtain cannot yet be brought into the actual temple court until nightfall, it is left to dry in the chel. If the curtain that became Tameh was new, shotchin otah al gag ha'itzdaba, then we spread it out to dry on the roof overhanging the benches set up on the temple mount where the curtain is visible from afar. Now, there were several rows of stone benches on the temple mount for people to sit on, and these were covered by an overhanging roof that provided shade and protection from the rain. We would spread it out on the roof overhanging the benches, so that the people will see its beautiful handiwork. This was done in order to encourage people to donate fine materials for the temple curtains. Now, all of the laws discussed in our Mishnah apply equally to any utensils that became Tameh while in the temple. The Mishnah chose to speak about the curtain only because it wished to teach us about the unique practice of spreading it out so that people could see its fine handiwork. And that is in Rabotai of Mishnah Daled. Mishnah Hey now begins having mentioned a halacha relating to the curtain that separates the Kodesh HaKodeshim from the Kodesh. The Mishnah describes that curtain. As we explained earlier, in the second temple, where there was no actual wall separating between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKodeshim, two curtains hung where the wall would have been. Our Mishnah discusses these curtains. The Mishnah begins, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Asegan. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says in the name of Rabbi Shimon, the son of the deputy of the Kohanim. Now, Rabbi Shimon was the son of Rabbi Hananiah, the deputy of the Kohanim that we mentioned earlier in chapter 6, Mishnah 1. The Segan was deputy to the Kohen Gadol, serving in the Kohen Gadol's place when he was unavailable. He was also in charge of all the other Kohanim, as the Rambam writes in Ilchot Klei HaMikdash, chapter 4, Lachas 16. But again, the Mishnah says, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, the son of the deputy of the Kohanim, Parochet Oviyah Tefach. The curtain was a tefach thick, V'al Shivim Ushnaim Nimin Reget, and it was woven using 72 heddle shafts. Now, woven cloth is made up of two groups of threads that crisscross each other. The horizontal threads are passed through the vertical threads. This is accomplished by using a special frame that has threads running across it, at the center of which are loops called heddle shafts, through which the horizontal threads are passed. To create a curtain with the necessary dimensions, 72 such heddle shafts were required. Orka 40 amah. The curtain's length was 40 amot. Ve'ochba 20 amah. And its width was 20 amot, so that the curtain would fit the dimensions of the Kodesh, which was 20 amot wide by 40 amot high. Umishmonim u'shtei ribon na'aset. It was made from 820,000 threads. Ushtayim osin b'chol shana. 2 new curtains were made each year. Now, again, just to recap, because I want to read a note. Parochet oviyah tefach. The curtain was a tefach thick. V'al shivim u'shnayim nimin nereget. It was woven using 72 heddle shafts. V'al kol nima v'nima 24 chutin. And each of these threads contained 24 thinner strands. Each thread contained 6 strands of each of 4 materials used in the curtain. Tchelet, blue wool. Algeman, purple wool. Tolad shani, wool dyed red. And shesh, linen. As the Torah mentions in Shemot, chapter 26, pasuk 31. All 6 strands of one material would be twisted into a single thread. It's like Gemara says on page 71b in Masechet Yomah. Then all 4 of these 6 strand threads were twisted together, forming a thick 24 strand thread. Okar 40 amah. The curtain's length was 40 amot. Ve'ochba 20 amah, and its width was 20 amot, so that it would fit the dimensions of the Kodesh, like we mentioned, which is 20 amot wide by 40 amot high. Umishmonim u'shtei ribon na'aset. It was made from 820,000 threads. Ushtayim osin b'chol shana. 2 new curtains were made each year. Now the commentators explained, because the 2 curtains hanging between the Kodesh and Kodesh Kodeshim would regularly become blackened from the smoke of the Ketoret, the incense offered on the inner altar, which was situated in the Kodesh, they needed to be replaced annually. Ushlosh meot kohanim matbilin otah. Because each curtain was so large and heavy, 300 kohanim were needed to immerse it in a mikveh. Now, whenever a new curtain was made, it had to be immersed in a mikveh before it was used, even if it was not known to have become contaminated by a rabbinic decree. Every new utensil used in the temple required immersion before being used. Now, in truth, the curtain was not actually so heavy as to require 300 kohanim to immerse it. The number given by the Mishnah should be understood as an exaggeration meant to show that the curtain was extremely large and heavy, as the Rav explains based on the Gemara Masechet Chulin, page 90b. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai La'olam. Amen v'amen.